Hello, today we're going to talk about letters of recommendation, which are an important part of your application process to universities in the U.S., both for undergraduate candidates and graduate candidates. We're going to talk a bit about what letters are, how to solicit them, and what they should contain. So first of all, a letter is basically one of the application requirements for most, if not all, U.S. universities. This letter really complements other parts of the application, such as exams, essays, test scores, etc. And it provides a broader picture of who you are as a candidate and why this university should accept you to be part of your program. Generally, the universities will ask for 2 to 3 letters, but it's important to check with the specific website of the university and the program you're applying to be sure that you meet the requirements. These letters are used basically to determine your admission to academic programs and any funding for academic programs. So because they show who you are through another person's eyes. They provide another perspective on you as a candidate. So for example, you write your essays, you take your test scores, many of the components, maybe a divide. You should write your letter. Well, someone who is in a position. So it's not always a good idea to get the high school principal or the rector de la universidad or even el decano. That's fine if and when the person knows you very well and can really talk about who you are as a person. Someone who can talk about your character, your personal motivations, more than just what might be on your resume. This doesn't always have to be a teacher. It can also, especially in the case of undergraduate applicants, it can be a coach, maybe a boss, a pastor, an advisor, anyone who knows you and can really talk about skills that would make you a good person to have in a classroom. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who let's say can say this is the GPA that this person earned, but rather someone who can say this person has creativity, this person is a hard worker, this person works in a team, this person is intellectually curious, etc. Who can not only talk about that but provide specific examples. So this person is creative because when they were faced with the problem X, then they found these solutions and were able to make that happen. And this should not be either a family member or a friend, because understandably these letters are not going to be as influential because the person, it's pretty common that your family member is going to say only positive things about you. So you want someone who is more impartial, who's not automatically going to be, let's say, on your team. So for those of you applying to graduate studies, your graduate recommender, the person who's writing your letter, ideally should be someone who has a graduate degree, preferably in your desired area of study. So if I want to study a program in second language teaching in TESOL, then I want to find someone who has at least a master's degree, and if it's in second language acquisition TESOL, even better. It doesn't have to be, but the reason for that is because if I have a degree in this, then I know what it takes to be successful. And so if I'm a professor who already has the same degree that you as a student are aspiring to, then that means I can say, with credibility that you as a student, you have what it takes to be able to be successful in this demanding graduate program. It should also be someone who has worked closely with you either as a professor or a supervisor. So in the case of graduate studies, this would be most likely either conducting research or working on your undergraduate thesis, possibly an internship. It's important, especially on the graduate level, that the recommender be able to comment about who you are as an academic, not just who you are as a person. Both of those things are extremely important. So the first thing you guys need to do is you need to have a conversation, whether in person or via phone, with your recommender. Well, I'll step back. This would be after maybe sending them an email or an introductory conversation that would allow them to decide if they are able and willing to write the recommendation. But once that person has agreed to write the recommendation, then the next step is to have a conversation with them to provide the necessary context about you and also what your plans are. So it's important to have this discussion with them about why you want to study in the U.S. What motivates you to go not only study abroad, but specifically in the U.S.? And what universities are you applying to and why? Are you applying mainly to big universities that offer large class sizes, or are you looking at smaller liberal arts schools? Are you looking at programs that have PhD options if you're a graduate student because you might be considering going on to do a PhD? All of these things are important to put your recommender in the context. You can also remind them how you know them, what courses you might have taken with them, when you worked with them, any specific projects that you did with them. If this is, for example, your thesis director that's going to write your letter, then maybe you can talk about what your thesis was about or the process that you went through with that person as your mentor. You can also provide them a copy of your admissions essay, which would be a great idea if you have it already. If you don't, you can provide them with your CV or other additional information that might help them get a better idea of who you are as a person. The next step you want to do with them is really explain the context of letters of recommendation in the U.S. So maybe some of the differences with what a letter of recommendation is in the U.S. and in Colombia, the importance of a letter of recommendation in the U.S., and maybe some suggestions for content. We will help you with that by providing you with an outline that you can provide to them that might have some helpful tips. But it's very important that you communicate to the recommenders the importance of these letters and that it's not simply a formality, but really they are influential in the application process. Then you can confirm with them the information about when the letter is due, when you need to have it, in the format for the submission. So maybe it's an online submission and they have to log into several different platforms to upload the letter several different times. Or maybe they need it physically. So maybe you'll need them to print out, 5 or 6 different copies of the letter and then sign it and give you those hard copies. But that's something that you'll discuss specifically with each of them depending on which universities you'll be applying to. So it's important to know that you should provide them with the context and all the information, but do not write the letter yourself. That's something that sometimes professors or recommenders will ask. They'll say, well, write me a letter and I'll sign it. And that's really something we need to stay away from as students, because it's part of the academic integrity process of the applications is really being able to have someone give their outside perspective. So, something you can do if they say to do this, say, I'm actually not allowed to do that, but I'm happy to have, further conversations with you, or I'm happy to provide you with a couple of bullet points. I think that's fine. You can provide them with some things, some suggestions of maybe topics to include, and then they can redact the letter. And I think it's important to also tell them why you chose them to write your letter. So out of all the teachers you've had, why do you prefer to use this person as a reference? What in their teaching or their supervision or their mentorship, what inspired you to ask them to write the letter? So the content, what should a letter include? Well, a strong recommendation letter should first of all include how long the writer has known you and in what capacity. So I met this student when he was in 9th grade, and I was his teacher in 2 different classes and then worked with him in an after-school club. Or I was the thesis director for this student and had him during 3 different classes during his university studies, etc. The letter should be academic. So while yes, the recommender should be saying some personal anecdotes or talking about you as a person, the tone of the letter should be formal and it should be academic. Because the goal of the letter is to achieve admission and financial aid in an academic program. The letter should also provide concrete examples. So just to reiterate what we said earlier, these are concrete examples of your ability to be successful in a U.S. academic program. This is the end goal of this letter. And the concrete examples are what's really going to stick out to the admissions committee. It's what they're going to remember. If we say Pepito Perez works well in a team, works well with others, that's not as impactful as saying Pepito Perez works well with others because I have witnessed him mediating conflicts regarding this XYZ in this class, and this is the outcome. So these concrete examples really help bring to life you as a student and help the admissions committee remember you. A strong letter is also going to tell a story about who you are. It's not just going to be facts or numbers, this GPA, that GPA, etc. It's going to tell the university something they don't already know. And this, I think, is the key. So the letter is complementary and supplementary to the rest of your application. If we simply wanted to know what classes you took and what awards you won, that's what a CV or a resume or an essay is for. But really, you want the recommender to tell the university something that they can't learn from the rest of your application, something with added value. And a couple additional tips. So check if the university might have any specific requirements or any specific guidance regarding the letter. Sometimes they will have tips, or sometimes they will have things they specifically want or specifically don't want in the letters. I think you should verify the deadline and how the letter should be submitted. That's really, really important, because there's nothing like getting to 2 days before the deadline and realizing that, oh, I got the wrong date, or I told the recommender that they should be physical, but they're really online, or vice versa. And so those things are really, really important to verify, and remember that they vary depending on the university. They can change depending on which university you're applying to. And finally, an important topic. So English versus Spanish. Which language do the recommenders write in? Well, I would say that unless the recommender has an extremely high level of English, my suggestion would be that the person write the letter in Spanish, and then we will have it translated. That's because these are really tricky documents to write, and so unless the person really has a high command of the language, then I think it's the best idea is for them to write the letter in Spanish, and then they can send it to me or to your advisor, who can then have it translated, and then we can send that translated copy back to the person. Because these are confidential documents, the best way to do it is not really for the recommender to give you the letter, but rather for the recommender, for him or her to be in contact with the advisor, and then we can work out the process of the translation, and then have that copy back to the recommender. If the letters are physical, what the university will generally ask for is for the recommender to put it in an envelope, seal the envelope, close the envelope, and then put their signature on the part that's closed, so that the university then knows it's a confidential document. And then that envelope can go in the admissions packet with all your other documents. Remember that while it's the recommender's responsibility to write the letter, it is your responsibility to prepare them and to provide this person with all the context that they need to write a strong letter. So to close, this is an example of a letter that's maybe not as strong. It doesn't say bad things about the person, but it's very straightforward. It's very, what someone might read in a hoja de vida, in a resume. It doesn't add any value to the application. As you can see on the right, this says, "What's wrong with this letter?" There are no details. The faculty member clearly knows the student only as an advisor and has never had her in class. Moreover, the letter discusses only material that's evident in her transcript. You want a letter that goes beyond listing the courses you've taken and your grades. So that's why it's important that while this letter may be positive, may have good things to say about the student, this letter doesn't really help the student's application process. And that's where the details and the added value really become important. Here are a couple helpful resources, and we can send you this presentation as well so that you have these, but resources that you might find useful to provide you with extra context about asking for letters of recommendation. And then the first link is for recommenders, how to write a letter of recommendation. Again, we will send you guys a document you can also pass along to your professors or your recommenders. And we as advisors are also happy to talk to them if they have any questions about what might be expected or what might be some components of a strong letter of recommendation. Next steps. So first, again, recheck the requirements for each university, see how many letters are required, what the submission method is, and how translations might work. If you're going to need your translations or if the professor will be writing the letter in English. The next step is to make a list of your possible recommenders and then discuss that list with your Education USA advisor. One common question we get is whether an Education USA advisor can write a letter. And I think the answer is yes, but it's important to evaluate if that's going to be helpful or not. Some of you who might have known your advisors for quite a while, it might be beneficial to have that person write a letter it might have seen you in various stages of your academic progress. But at the same time, Education USA advisors can also send a supplementary document apart from your letters of recommendation. So it might make more sense if you do have 2 or 3 people who would be willing to write a recommendation that you have those people, and then maybe your Education USA advisor can send an extra letter if it's determined to be necessary. So that's also something you can discuss with your advisor, what makes sense in your specific situation. And then contact your recommenders as soon as possible, and then you can follow the procedures of the conversation that you can have with them. So we look forward to hearing from you about your next steps and about who your recommenders might be, and if you have any questions at all. Thanks so much and have a great day.